So I really hope that you gave the challenge a try, and of course that you managed to do it. So here goes my solution in case you're wondering how I did it. I'm going to start by creating the tip calculator function. Okay, so function, and I'm going to call it tip calculator. Then in here you pass a value, which I call the bill, and then we have our function body. Okay, now we want to, depending on the bill value, to determine the percentage of the tip that John likes to pay. Okay, so here we have our rules again. So 20% if the bill is less than $50, 15% if it's between 50 and 200, and then 10% if the bill is more than 200. So I'm going to define var percentage here, and then I'm going to leave it. And now in an if-else statement is where I'm actually going to define the value for the percentage depending on the bill. So if the bill is less than 50, then the percentage should be 20. Or actually it should be 0.2. So we could write 0.2, but we don't even need the 0 here. So just 0.2, because that's actually the value that later we are going to multiply with the bill. Okay, so remember, to calculate 20% of a value, we multiply it by 0.2 in this case, because that's 20 divided by 100. All right, so else if the bill is greater or equal to 50, and if the bill is less than 200. So that's very similar to the stuff that we already did before, right? And so this should be nothing new for you at this point. So in this case, our percentage is going to be 0.15, and else the percentage will be 0.0, or actually 0.1, sorry. So 0.1, which is 10%, okay? And in this case, we don't even have to specify the if here, because if the bill is not less than 50 and not between 50 and 200, well, then that means that it's more than 200. And so this case here covers all of that. Okay, and so all we have to do now is to return this percentage times the bill. Okay, and so for example, if our bill was $100, then we would divide it with 0.15, which would then be $15. And so we would return $15 from this tip calculator function. All right, now you could of course have done this differently. For example, you could have done a switch like we did before. For example, where is it? So something very similar to, I'm not sure where, yeah, so here is it. So you could have done something similar to this one here, for example, as well, where in each case you would then return the bill times the current percentage. Okay, but it works fine just like this, okay? So just to tell that there are always different solutions for the same problems. Okay, and now I just want to actually test this here with some value. So tip calculator, and let's set it to 100, and we need to console.log it. So again, this is just for testing to see if our function is actually working just fine. So this here should return 15, right? And indeed it does. Okay, so that's 15% of 100, which is between 50 and 200. Okay, now let's try it with 300, and we're going to take 10% of that, which should be 30. So let's test, and indeed it works. And now let's put, let's say $10, which is of course less than 50, and so 2% of that should be $2. And yeah, indeed it is 2. And so that means that our tip calculator is actually working. So all we have to do now is to create these two arrays that John wants as a result. So the first thing I'm going to do is to actually store the bills into an array. So we have 124, we have 48, and then 268, I believe. Let's just confirm that. And yeah, so these are the bills that we have. And then let's calculate the tips actually. So the first tip is calculated by using tip calculator with the bills on position number 0, right? Then the second one, and actually let's put it in a separate line here. So the second one is tip calculator bills on element 1. And then finally, the last one is calculating the tip with bills at position number 2. Okay, so we just created an array here which contains these 3 values, which all come from the result of calculating the tip using our tip calculator function. All right, so let's log it to the console here. And so yeah, here we have our tips. Now this here is something weird that is happening with the 9.6 and 001. And this is something weird that JavaScript does with numbers, and no one really knows why this is happening. So it should just be 9.6. And the same is actually happening here with these 5999998. And this, of course, should be 18.6. Okay, but that's nothing we can change. That's not like our fault. So JavaScript just does these weird calculations here that do not really make sense. But so don't worry about them. Okay. So this is the first array that we want. So the 3 tips. And then finally we want one containing all 3 final paid amounts. And so that's also very easy. Let's say final values. So another array. And well, here we have to say builds at position 0 plus the tips at position 0. And that's it. So very simple. Let's just grab this here. And here it's 1. And here it's 2. And so this is actually all that we need to do in order to have our final results. Okay, and now you see that actually here, now we have this 0.6 and this 0.6 coming from these 2. So this is really weird again, but yeah, don't worry about it. Anyway, what we really want to see here is that this 142.6 is really the sum of the original bill, which is 124 plus this 18.6. Okay, and the same of course for the others. So 57.6 is 9.6 plus 48, and the same here for this last element. And so with that, the challenge is completed. Okay. And you could have done it very differently, of course. For example, you could have declared empty arrays in the beginning and then used the push method to add all of these results to the array. But again, it's not really important that your code is the same as mine, okay? I cannot stress this enough. So what I really want you is to write code and to think about how to solve these problems. And if the results that you get are the same as mine, well then that's really fantastic. So you've come a long way in this section, but there's still a couple of more things to learn. So let's now move on.